Hi everybody, Paul Delaney here with Late Ice Sport Fishing and Ice Force Pro Staff. I wanted to talk a little bit today about jigging walleyes in clear water. Here in the Door County area, Green Bay, Sturgeon Bay, we have extremely clear water. So our opportunities for our walleyes are pretty short. And what I mean by that is during the day, we have about an hour and a half, 2-hour window in the morning, once again in the evening. So to try to take full advantage of your time out there, what we like to do is we like to get out real early. Try to make our noise early in the dark. Get our holes drilled, know where we're gonna fish, and then we'll quiet down. Get everybody in position and be ready for when those fish do come through. So something interesting that we've been playing with, typical jigging presentations out here, you're typically using stuff like your jigging wraps. We're using spoons like the VMC rattle spoons. With those baits there, we're presenting these baits about 1.5 feet, 2 feet off the bottom. Because in a lot of cases, these are big fish. You know, we're talking about 6, 8, 9 pound fish. Those are big fish. So you want to have your presentation above them. You know, their eyes are above on their head, they're looking up, they see that. Now those fish typically are feeding on what we have out here, are smelt, shad, stuff like that. So that presentation there is going to be trying to imitate the shad and the smelt that are swimming up in the water column. But one thing that's changed out here in the Great Lakes over the years is the presence of the gobies. Now the goby is a fish that does not swim in the water, doesn't have an air bladder, cannot swim up in the water. So these gobies are always on the bottom. And not only walleyes, but all the fish right now have been keying in on them and feeding on them in addition to smelt, shad like we were talking about. So something we've been doing is trying to replicate and present baits in a fashion that look like the gobies that are on the bottom. So with that, then we're changing things up a little bit. I will go over to like a Dominator jig head here. And what I'm doing with this, I'm not presenting this up in the water column. What I'll do is I'll put 1 or 2 fathead minnows on this. And what I'll do is I'll actually pin those through the tail so that the 2 minnows are fighting against each other. There's a lot more action down there, natural action, not a jigging presentation. But B, it's on the bottom where these gobies are all the time. So I'm not saying all fish are feeding on the bottom on these gobies. There are fish that are feeding up in the water column, and your jigging presentations that are above are still effective. But if you're seeing a lot of fish coming and they're turning your baits down, don't be afraid to try to do a little bit different presentation and present your baits, whatever it may be, on the bottom, leaving it on the bottom. Now, when you're on the bottom, you do want to have somewhat of a taut line. You don't want to have a lot of slack there in case that fish does pick up that bait. You want to be able to feel it as quick as you can. So that presentation for me is I'm presenting that bait on the bottom and with semi-taut, kind of tight line, and just barely moving that bait just to create a little bit of a puff in the sand or the silt, and then letting those baits, let that jig just sit pinned on the bottom and letting those minnows do their thing naturally. So it's something different that we've been doing out here. So if you're having difficulties getting these fish to bite on your presentations in the water column, don't be afraid to try this presentation. Grab yourself a lead head jig, put a couple fathead minnows on it or some shiner minnows, present that bait on the bottom and see if you can get some of those fish to go.